Hi, this is Dave Elkins from Schematic and the band May, and you are watching Front Row Live.
Hey guys, Rob here, Front Row Live Entertainment, hanging out with Dave of Schematic. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Pleasure hanging out with you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, always.
Awesome.
So tell us a little bit about Schematic, your new project.
Well, there's many facets to what Schematic's doing. As far as why we're on tour right now, I put out a new record about 2.5 weeks ago under the name Schematic. It's my first solo record of sorts. I was in a band called May for about 10 years, and this is the first thing I've done apart from May. I moved to Nashville about almost 2.5 years ago. Started a studio out there. I've got a record label, have a management company, and we're building this thing called the Schematic Community. It's sort of like a tool that's going to help artists sort of pave their way for the future, you know, under the circumstances of social networking being how it is, how a lot of bands can access things like Kickstarter, Pledge Music, Indiegogo, etc. They can start to fund their own way, you know, to accomplish their goals of making music. This is a way to help them get from point A to point really Z. Yeah. And there's a lot of things they need to help them figure out along the way that, from my experience, I'd love to sort of mentor artists and learn from other artists, you know, that don't have the same experiences that I have, that we might be able to sort of pull a community together to help people out. But as far as just the music goes that I'm working on, Schematic is they got a new record called Color Inside the Lines, and we've been touring on it for about the last 10 days. Okay.
And how was writing for this record? You said this is the first time, I think even since the first May album, that you actually wrote by yourself or for yourself, right?
Yeah. Well, since I built the studio out in Nashville, where I live now, it's just sort of been an experimental, long process. It took me about 2 years to make the record, just because I do it in times when, you know, we didn't have clients or artists in the studio working. And every time I learned something from an instrument that, you know, would come into the studio, or a melody that I just have stuck in my head, when the time was right, I'd just kind of go and start working on it on my own. And it's interesting. I played probably about 80% of the record by myself. Played drums on over half the record, keys on about half the record, and, you know, a lot of songs just might have me and one other guy that have kind of played everything. And then some songs I've got co-writes with friends of mine. Steven from Amberlin plays, or helped me write one of the songs. A friend of mine who plays drums in a band called Leagues back in Nashville. They're super cool. He played drums on a few songs on my record. A guy named Tony Lucido played bass on the whole record, and he's a really good friend of mine that I worked with before and look to work with again. But you know, it's an interesting process when you're doing it by yourself, because you have to make all the decisions. And sometimes that's like exactly what needs to happen, and then sometimes you just can't wait for someone to come along and help you, you know, push the process along. Yeah.
Now, but writing this, you know, how are you able to write something different from, you know, originally May?
Yeah, I think that obviously when people hear my voice,
you have that voice that whether it's May or some other band,
they're gonna notice it.
It's gonna you're gonna hear it
for sure. So in that sense, people are gonna recognize, you know, Dave from May when they hear the Schematic stuff. But when I was a kid, my dad was in bands when I was really young. Before I was born, and then when I was really young, he was in bands, and he got me my first drum set, and my mom played piano, so I had like a very musical family. But my dad used to tell me there's nothing new under the sun, and I think that's very true. And so I'm almost like defiantly trying to prove my dad wrong. And so when you hear the Schematic stuff, it's very familiar, but I'm taking sort of like what I've learned from bands before me as far as like time signature changes, and we're as groovy as we can possibly be with the music, but it's like we're doing it slightly different than what has been done before, and it's more heady, but it still feels. And so that's sort of like been one of my motivating factors, is like, let's try to make it different for the sake of being different, if anything.
Exactly. And is that tough for you?
It's tough playing it live, because there's a lot of like timing issues that you have to count out when you're on stage. So it's not just like feeling it out. It's like, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, what? Why? You know, but it feels right when you listen to it when you're not performing it. And so we've been on tour for about 10 days, and we're really starting to get into our groove, and so it's starting to really feel right now. So, you know, it took a little while for us to get into it, but now that we are, you know, acclimated with the songs, it's really feeling great.
Nice. And let's talk a little bit about the song you did with Steven. I believe it's called What It Means.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me a little bit about the song and how was working with Steven. Is this your first time you've worked with him before?
It's interesting. I was on the short list to produce Anchor and Braille, his side solo project. And so before that happened or didn't happen, I was put in the studio with him to do a co-write for a song on the Anchor and Braille record. And then there was some different things that transpired, and unfortunately it didn't happen that we were able to work together on that record. Yeah. And the song that we wrote together, I called him up and I asked him, I said, hey, did you end up using that song for the record? And he hadn't, so I said, well, can I just take it back and finish it? So I did that, and that happens to be the very last track on the record too. So, but that was our first writing experience, and I believe wholeheartedly that we'll get many of those opportunities to happen again, and then on top of it, hopefully I'll get to produce the next Anchor and Braille, record that comes to pass. Yeah.
I mean, Steven and Amber Lynn are amazing.
Oh yeah, we've been label mates since both of our first records on Tooth and Nail back in 2003, and we've played tours together. We played festival shows together. We've been friends forever. We both live in Nashville, so actually my wife was texting his wife today. And so
they're like besties.
Well, every season since we moved to Nashville, we watch the show Mad Men together. So that's one of the things that draws us closer together is family, Nashville, music, and obviously Mad Men. Yeah.
So what's next for Schematic at the moment? This tour is pretty fresh right now. So what else do you have planned out for the year?
As soon as the tour is over, I go home, and I've actually got the studio booked all the way up until November. So we did an Indiegogo campaign back in October and November. We raised over $50,000, and part of what my studio time is going to be like over the next several months, there was this $1,000 Want to Work with Schematic campaign where artists are going to come to the studio. We're going to work on one song. Actually, it was $500, excuse me. Come to the studio, work on one song, mix and master it, and then once we have all the songs together, we're going to do like a bracket in the spirit of March Madness, which is going on right now. There'll be a voting system, and by the time there's one winner, they're going to get a full-length record, and they're going to be released if they want to be, if we can come to a decision on it, one of Schematic Records' artists. So I've got a lot of that going on. I've got a few just EPs and 2 full-length records with bands and artists that I'll be producing, and so that kind of takes me all the way up until the end of the year. So we're working on the Schematic app, which is sort of a mobile and web-based app that helps bands with their managerial skills. It helps them connect with an audience they don't have yet, and it helps the audience find the music that they're hoping and longing for that they can't necessarily find because it's not on the radio yet or whatever. And so we just have so much going on, whether it be managerial or production or, et cetera. And one of the things I get to do on the side, which is weird to say on the side now because I did it for 10 years, but May just did some reunion shows celebrating the 10-year anniversary of our first record, and nothing's confirmed at this point, but we are starting to chat about what if we did this, in major markets all over the country. So we might do about 10 shows, all over the country this fall. So I know we're not technically in LA, we're in Fullerton right now, but we might be in LA, September, October-ish.
That would be.
It has. 2010, we did our farewell tour. And, we love each other, and we love the music, and we love what May was able to bring us. And it wasn't like we broke up, but we just announced that we were going to take a break. I live in Nashville now. Our drummer, Jacob, lives in D.C. Our guitar player is in college, about to get his degree. He graduates this May. So we've all been doing things.
Coincidence, or?
Well, I don't know. You have to ask him. But, it's just been a really good time to sort of take a breather from, putting all of our eggs in the May basket. And when you get away from it long enough, you miss it terribly. And this reunion was like a reminder of how much we really love doing it. So I would cross, your fingers, but
I'm sure everybody's doing that too.
Yeah, but hopefully you'll see some May shows popping up in this fall.